Project 571, genetically engineered vampire created to destroy evil.
What do you want?
We need your help to kill a vampire.
Malleus Maleficario. It was written by a witch. The first witch. Titania.
That was a little snippet from The Witch's Hammer, the first film I ever solo directed, and it's just been remastered and re-released on Amazon. So if you like witches and vampires, then please do check it out. Anyway, let's get on with this week's episode. So if I set this up, so a friend of mine, Glenn Yard, shout out to Glenn Yard, said, You've got to talk to Matt Simpson. He's made a film, he's an actor, he shot it all himself. And obviously, as soon as I heard that, I was like, I just had this image of what this was going to be.
That's the marketing problem, mate. That is the marketing issue. The old rolling of the eyes.
Yes, I've
seen it all.
Yeah, we'll talk through that. But obviously, I had a perception of what that was going to be, but it's not that at all. I've got to say. So first of all, tell me about the film itself. So what's the story, and tell me the backstory behind you making it.
Oh God. So the story is about an ex-military alcoholic who's suffering from unexplained blackouts. And the more he tries to figure out why he's blacking out, the more he blacks out until he realizes they're triggered by a trauma that his mind is fighting to forget. It's very much a story of suppressed trauma and the internal battles that we go through to discover that trauma. Yeah.
Okay. And now tell me why on earth you decided to shoot this entire thing yourself. And I mean, like the credits is literally your name, some thank yous, and the software you used. So you did absolutely everything. So where did that come from?
Many different reasons, and it's changed over the years, actually. So originally it was just about a challenge, right? I wanted to challenge myself. I was also at that stage where I'd come out of drama school as an actor. I'd seen a few failed projects. You know, I got flown over to LA, did this incredible indie feature, and never saw the light of day. So that was kind of like my reality check into the industry. It's like, where do we go from here if this is going to continue happening? How am I ever going to have control over the industry, or how am I going to have control over my career? But at the same time, I was always interested in filmmaking and the other side of the camera as well. And so I actually turned to the other side of the camera for a few years, and I ended up directing TV ads, and I'm still directing TV ads. I've been doing it for a while. But at the same time, it was kind of like I wanted to kind of show, or mainly first challenge myself if it was actually possible. Because at the time, and still to this day, it's still actually the world's first live action solo feature. So I wanted to show if it's possible, not even thinking that I'd even finish it to start off with. But it was challenging through different processes. Like the writing of it was a challenge in itself. Just to write a compelling one-person feature film is a challenge in itself. There's actually only ever been 2 films that I know of that have got one cast member in it. There are quite a few films with one member in it, and then they've got off-speaking characters and stuff like this, like Locke and Buried and things like this. But there are actually only ever been 2 films that have got one cast member in it. So the challenge there was the writing element of it. And then as I kind of got into learning more on both sides of the camera, I suppose I just kept picking up on different roles that I potentially could do. It's like, oh, I'd like to direct this as well. And, maybe I'd like to, hold the camera. I'm not thinking I'd do cinematography or DP, but I'd like hold the camera and be kind of like a bit hands-on there. And then I think, I don't know when it actually landed, but then I was just like one day, I think I was in LA and I was talking to these people. I think I was half drunk. We were just kind of like chatting away, and I was just like, why not do everything on my own and see if I could challenge myself and do it on my own. But it was a personal challenge to me. And now, as it's become a bit bigger, I suppose now it's about proving that, we don't have to wait around for an opportunity in the industry. That is the main problem with the industry, and the main problem we always know is that how do you break into the industry? There's always been that break into the industry, and there's no such thing as break into the industry. You're always breaking into the industry, but it's the whole thing of like, how can you, instead of waiting around for an opportunity, because even if you've got a friend who's willing to help you out, you're still waiting for them to give you that time for them to come help you. So it's like, without waiting for any opportunity whatsoever, can you go out, can you create something compelling enough, interesting enough, that's going to get an audience? But also, can you do it from an accessible point of view? So I also wanted to make sure that it was a no budget film. There's no such thing as a no budget film, but as in like it was a zero budget film, which means everything was kind of hired at lower cost, including the location, which was an Airbnb. So it was about showing that without any crew, without any cast, with limited resources and budget, you're still able to bring a story to life and hopefully get an audience to see it. And it's just obviously then blown up from there. And we could talk more about that.
Yeah, and what I would say is people should check it out, because there's a few things you've done that have definitely broken away from what I was expecting. So as soon as I heard actor on his own, I thought single camera setup. It's going to be like a monologue, hour and a half monologue. Wasn't. And also it cuts a lot. There's a lot of camera shots in it. It's not like it's not like one wide and one close and you just come to that. It feels like we're all over the place. Yeah. So just a logistical thing. So what did you shoot it on?
I shot on a Sony A7S III.
Right. Okay.
Many reasons, but one of the reasons I wanted it to be quite an affordable camera. Mm-hmm. I don't want to shoot on anything big. I was working as a director at the time, and I probably could have got my hands on something bigger. But then I started to think about I didn't actually need anything more expensive and bigger, because the camera needed to be light, because I did a lot of snorri cam POV stuff, strapping it to myself. So I needed it to be a lightweight camera, and it also needed to be very good at autofocus and good in low light. So at the time, that was the best camera that I could get my hands on. And I thought, and I kind of knew the camera already. I'd used it for self-tapes, so I was kind of used to it. And I think that's one of the things that, take away anything, is that just knowing the kit that you use is half of the battle. It's not the kit that you use. Mm-hmm. So I've always been a believer in you can make anything look good. Doesn't matter what you use a lot of the time. It's the intentionality behind it. So the Sony A7S III was good for many different reasons, and it really worked. Like, there are moments where it pulls autofocus perfectly with no breathing and stuff like this. And I'm just like, it's just dumb luck. But it was great that it happened that way. Obviously, you can set focus, and so the camera was one thing. But talking of going about, you mentioned about coverage. So coverage was. It should be one of the main goals, to get coverage, but also it's story first. So it should obviously be detriment to the story, right? Whatever the story needs. Now, for me, I wanted the story and the camera work and the sound and everything to be very subjective, right? I wanted the audience to feel like they were going along with Rob as a character and in his psyche and going along with his thought process. So the subjectivity of the camera, which is where like I said earlier, I did like snorri cam stuff and POV stuff. So you felt like you were, in what Rob was going through. But I also placed the camera in things like I put it in the clock and the bin and different things like this. Anything that kind of grabs his attention or is kind of what I want the audience to be thinking about at that moment, I use the subjectivity of the camera as well. So that gives you a lot of coverage anyway, and intentionality behind the shots that you choose. But I also storyboarded the whole thing. I actually storyboarded it in 3D. Not that I needed to, I just didn't want to sketch. But I did it in 3D mainly because I was also able to figure out the lens, and I wasn't able to get on the location beforehand too much. So I could figure out what lens I needed for the location, the measurements and the size of the flat that I needed. And I think it all comes down to preparation. With solo filmmaking, it's all about prep, because you're so fatigued, it's relentless when you're filming, is that everything comes into preparation, which is why I storyboarded it. Now, when you're not solo filmmaking, you're in a team and you're filming, sometimes it's nice to be like, let's just see what happens, right? Let's think creatively on the day. And that's great. But as solo filmmaker, you can't really do that, because you'll just end up just either messing with continuity or missing a shot that you need to tell the story or things like that. So I did have a very clear shot list, and I was making sure that I was ticking those boxes off on the shot list, making sure I was getting the story that I wanted to tell, because I was just tired, right?
Yeah, I bet you were. How long did it take to shoot?
20 days. Yeah.
20 days.
I went in thinking I could do 10 and it doubled. And I'd done production management before, but it was just the element of, it's so unexpected of how many things, how much you can film in a day is very different to normal filmmaking. And I was very ambitious and tried to do everything on a very precise and concise time, because obviously took time off work to do this. I didn't want to spend that much money on the location for long, even though it was just like an Airbnb, but I didn't want to do that either. But it was a massive reality check when on day one, I only filmed a page and a half and I needed to film 5 pages. So then it was kind of like, okay, what am I doing wrong? How do I reevaluate this? And how do I just get going? And the irony is, what was holding me back was my actor's brain.
Right. Okay.
Because I was most experienced in acting, and I feel like I was using that a lot of the time on set a little bit more. So it was always like, oh, let's do another take to make sure the acting's there and stuff like that. And actually, I didn't need that. I just needed to get on with it. Once I got a take, I just needed to move on. I couldn't play around with it. So I was still in that playing around mode, because that's where my director's hat comes on, is I like to kind of get more out of a take and more out of the acting to see if I can get something different in edit. But I just didn't have time for that. I just needed to tell the story. So then it became literally just run of the mill, get it done. And in the end, I wasn't even thinking about acting. Acting was the last thing on my mind.
Wow. And it's interesting, actually, because you've sort of done what a micro budget filmmaker would do with the cast, is you've sorted something enormous out first, which is location. And that is a really cool location you've got, because it's kind of like multi-level, just got the right look to it. And I'm sure that's probably immediately solved a lot of issues and added your budget on screen. Like I say, really good that it cuts, and you've even put some sort of camera wobble in there at times to make it to sort of almost you're playing with the audience, because I'm watching it going, oh, hang on, he's got his mate round for this shot, but you've obviously done something there. So
it's not camera wobble. It's actually, I used a face tracking gimbal.
Ah, right, okay.
There are actually moments, and you'll see it. Well, if you've only watched it once, sometimes you don't see it. If you see it a second time, you start to see actually the camera's moving. It's like there are moments where I'm walking down the stairs and it actually tracks me.
Yeah.
It only does basic pan and tilt when it works. And it didn't really work that well in low light. Did you see the little outtakes at the end?
Yes. Yeah. That was nice to see how you
shows when the camera's kind of just not focusing on me and it's just going off the way.
Doing its own thing. And
I think I didn't do just to be gimmicky as a solo filmmaker. I did it because I wanted a particular pace to the edit as well, and I wanted a bit of movement. And I knew that if I could add movement to the shots as much as possible, it would add that pace to it. So I wanted a little bit of movement, even when I was in shot.
Yeah. So, yeah, it works. And so sometimes I'll film a YouTube video where I'm talking about filmmaking, blah, 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 blah. And I'll do video a little bit, and then I'll just stop and look at myself, think, what am I doing? What am I talking about? Why am I, you'll have that moment, you just look at the state of me. So how do you do that over 20 days? Did you do that? Or is it just like, I'm an actor, I don't care do you know what I mean? I'm just going to get on with it. Or were there any moments where you were just like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yeah. And do you know what? Actually, people have said I look back on it now and I think I'm insane. But at the time I didn't. And I think it's because I just had this goal to finish it. And I had so many other things on my mind. But yeah, I look back on it now and I think, God, that was just ridiculous that I did. It just like embarrassing in some moments as well. Like, why do it? But then I just keep thinking, why not? Right? Like that's the thing. Yeah. If I at the time, did I find any moments? No, not really.
No. Yeah. I guess once you committed to that, you've got to do it.
You've got too much on your mind, especially when you're sticking to something. I think if you have too much thinking time, then maybe. That's what I think. I had that issue with how many pages I was filming, how much I was filming to start off with, because I was overthinking it. And a lot of the time, if you've done enough prep, you don't have to overthink it. I think that's where I was.
Definitely. And what's the kind of like final budget figure, do you think? How much did you spend on it?
Oh, so yeah, I've worked this out a few times, but obviously, because it's such a long period of time, it's anywhere between 5 and 6K.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to remember, like the camera to buy was 3 at the time. Lenses cost another grand, location cost another grand. So it's zero budget, right? And then I hired a few things. I did hire a few props, like there's a big telephone box, I had to hire that, and a few little lamps and stuff like this. But yeah, I wanted to make sure it was achievable for other people. And I've had some amazing response. Even this morning, some guy reached out saying he's now doing his own solo project because he saw the film. And it's just, I love how it's inspiring people to see that they can do things like this. Because like I said at the start, the hardest thing in the industry is being in the industry. My first day at drama school, the drama teacher said to us that 1% of actors are working at any given time. And we're in this little world where we just think, oh, you know, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. A lot of the time it doesn't. So, you know, low budget independent projects, just going out and doing it is definitely what you should be doing. But that's also a challenge in itself, right? They're getting the people on board and it does cost. And then the challenges of keeping everyone happy is an issue as well. So I wanted to show and hopefully prove that you can do it without that. Whether you want to or whether you need to, I don't know. Whether there's an audience for it, I think it comes down to how good the film is. And that's what I've always been worried about, is that the one person hook is the thing that sells it and not the story itself. And the film itself isn't good enough. But the good thing is now it's proven itself, where it's literally won every festival it's been in, which is crazy. And most times it's won it on the premise of, well, actually all the times it's won it on the premise of the film, but most times, like 2 of the times, I remember one of the judges came up to me and they didn't even know it was one person. Because I remember the first festival I put it in, I didn't put one person at the start, I need to put it right at the end. And then somebody told me to put it at the start as well. So yeah, it was like some people were watching it just for a film. And that to me is kind of everything. And that actually is my marketing problem at the moment. Yeah.
But it's also it's a problem, but it's a hook. And a lot of people haven't got a hook with their film. You've got a hook to get people into, you know, to watch it. So I do think I get where you're coming from, because like you say, it's that initial reaction I had. I had a certain perception of what it was going to be, but I think you're right. You've got a really solid script and story there. So that kind of, after a while, it's a little bit like Buried, like you mentioned. The gimmick is a guy in a box for an hour and a half, but then at 20 minutes in, suddenly you're completely engaged and hooked into the story, and that sort of becomes irrelevant. So it does work on that level. You mentioned festivals there. Going into festivals, did you have a strategy? Why did you pick those particular festivals?
I didn't have a strategy really, actually, and that was probably one of my downfalls. Was I definitely didn't go after the bigger festivals to start off with, and lost to premiere status pretty quick.
Right,
which is not, you know, would it have got in some of the bigger festivals? Probably not, because I actually got some really good. I got some feedback from Berlin Festival and stuff like this, which is quite crazy, which is nice. And it probably wouldn't have got in anyway. But the festivals that I went after, I wanted to do UK first for sure, and there was a local festival that I knew of, which was Unrestricted View Festival, which is a BIFA qualifying festival. Great guys. And that was where it premiered and it won. You know, and we got to see it on a big screen and stuff like this. So I kind of like that was a good way into it. And also one for acting as well. So it's a bit like a reality check. It's like, oh, actually people like this. People like the film. Now I need to push it out. And at that point I'd already submitted to a few more UK. So then it got into London Breeze and it won there. And then it got into Estetica, which is obviously a very big festival, and it won there. Right. And then 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago now, it had its US premiere at Cinequest. Now, Cinequest is obviously a very big festival in the US. And, you know, you're talking like, you know, there was like Bob Odenkirk there and Steve Zahn there and stuff like this, with their films. So you're going up against studio films then, right? It's a different kind of, now you need to, that's when you start seeing how does it work within the scale of things from a distribution point of view and the market point of view. So it was nice to see that. And it was definitely more of like a reality check on the next stage, which is distribution. I was planning to maybe do a few more festivals, but actually I'm going to go more sales now and distribution with it. I don't think any more festivals will elevate it in any way. And I found that festivals are interesting. Like, I love festivals, don't get me wrong, but they are struggling. Festivals struggle. They are struggling to get people in, the right audiences in. And that's why they're all going online as well. And it's just, you've probably done this yourself, but it's a long game, right? The festival thing, like I've been doing festivals since June last year now. So it's nearly been a year, and it's normally about a year of festivals you do. I'm now at the point where it's talking to sales agents on some great conversations. And like you said, the hook really helps. Mm-hmm. Like I'm talking to some big distributors and big sales agents, but then it's that conversation of, I don't know how I can market this, right? Like that's the challenge, because the hook is good enough, and the hook should be good enough to get people, just to, even an audience, to click. But then it's got to be justifiable. Like, what are they getting from the film? What are they, what's the enjoyment from the film? So that's the other thing that we have to try and market. And that, because it's not a high genre film, it's this drama, psychological kind of thriller. It kind of spreads across all three. It's not clearly defined as a genre film, which, unless you've got a name behind it, struggles to get to market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, I guess my advice in that area, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I made a film a couple of years ago that was very difficult to put a genre on, and that meant that sales and distribution was a challenge, because they speak in genre. They want to be able to go, it's this, package it like that, sell it like that those people will like it.
Unless they're the big sales agents who are just looking after the studios and talent.
Yeah. So that is a challenge. I guess, having watched it, I think you should lean into that. It's not horror, but it's certainly it makes you feel on edge when you're watching it. So I definitely think the thriller side is where you want people to kind of engage with this, because they'll get what they're looking for. They see the poster, they go into it with that in that headspace. So you're talking to sales agents and distributors at the moment. Are you doing Cannes? Where are you? How are you just doing it via email?
Yeah, I think it will be either with a sales agent or depending on where I'm at that point, like it's 2 months away, 3 months away. That will probably be the next thing. Go to market at Cannes, either with or without a sales agent, and push that. I'm also onto the next feature, which is already have got a lot of momentum behind it. So that will be a two-pronged approach. I'll be selling that as well, or trying to get more financing for that.
That's not you on your own, is it? Or is that another one?
My own, no.
You've done that now. That's done. You got that in your system.
That one hat of many hats is taken its last bag. This one's with a full team. But again, it's about this one's same kind of idea, where it's pushing the boundaries of the industry, right? We are very much stuck as an industry on where film is going. Is it going to stay the same? Is AI going to take over? How does independent film sit within the market and streaming and all this kind of stuff? And it's all a bit all over the place. And people just forget that the simple thing behind what makes a good film is the audience, right? It's the audience. It's that you've got to find an audience for it. So, but films aren't made for an audience a lot of the time. They're made to be a good film. So I've always feel like films need to be more than just a film. They need to be an extension of what the audience want. The next one is pushing the boundaries again within the filmmaking process, but also creating something outside of the film which organically markets the film without having to think about marketing. It's something that happens organically because of what the film is about. And that's how I think people need to, or the industry needs to think. It's like not catching on to existing IP. How do you create your own IP with an existing audience or an existing something that's out there, and use that? Because that's where independent films just fall short, because they're like, oh, how do I get an audience? I'll just try and do social media and get a couple of followers. It's like you're going to get like a couple hundred followers, maybe thousands. That's not going to make you a profitable film. It's got to be more than that. How do you tap into the bigger audience? And I wasn't thinking that way with Disremember. Disremember for me was just making it. And now it's about, hopefully it will inspire and maybe become something where people will look at it as a feat of filmmaking that people could then inspire to do themselves. I'm not expecting it to blow up or be big anywhere. And if it does, that's amazing. But I'm not expecting that. But now it's about the next thing is about preempting that and trying to generate that audience up front.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the sort of biggest lesson you learned from that whole experience of making that film yourself?
Don't do it again.
Don't do it again. Yeah. I say that
For
after
me,
every
don't
film.
do it again. I don't think I could survive doing that again.
Yeah.
It's mentally, and it was my breaking point. Definitely the hardest. When people say it's the hardest thing I've ever done, no, definitely the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
What's the question? What did I learn?
Well, what was your biggest lesson that you've kind of learned about filmmaking, I guess, from that film?
Never underestimate any department in any way. I knew what I was strong at and what I was weak at, and everything I work, and majority of the time, 90% of the time, I was working on what I was weak at. But also understanding, even if you're not a part of other roles, understanding what goes into other departments, understanding how that actually is justifiable to what you end up seeing on screen. I've always been a person who, even when I'm doing TV commercials, I look around and think, is that person needed? Is this needed? Is that needed? And most of the time it's like, I don't know. And that's weird in itself. And I feel like there's a way of doing things. There's a way of doing everything in the industry, marketing, creating a film and everything. That's all kind of like being packaged really nicely. And that's how everyone does stuff, right? These little stepping stones of creating a film. And you can break all of that. And I think that's what I keep learning. And that's why I want to keep pushing the boundaries, that there is no one way of doing anything, right? I made a film entirely on my own. You can do things however you want to do it and still create something. So if there's one thing I've learned, is that there's no one way of doing anything. And I'll continuously be in my head with the way I do everything with a film going forward.